Nasser's nationalization of the Suez Canal led to the Second Arab-Israeli War. About 11 years after World War II ended, conflict arose in Egypt when Gamal Abdel Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal. Nationalization caused Israel, France, and Britain to invade Egypt. These countries fought until the United Nations arranged a truce. First of all, the Suez Canal was opened in 1869. The construction was run by a French promoter, Ferdinand de Lesseps. De Lesseps would later unsuccessfully try to build the Panama Canal. The Suez Canal's construction would take 10 years to finish and also cost the lives of many thousands of Egyptian laborers. The canal would soon prove to be an amazing opportunity for its surrounding countries and for the industry of trade. The canal would be an importance to the industry of trade because it would save 12,000 miles of travel around Africa. Suez Canal is owned by a private company called the Suez Canal Company. The private company was originally owned by its shareholders, which were France, Austria, and also Russian investors, as well as the ruler of Egypt at the time, Ismail Pasha. In 1875, Ismail Pasha sold his 44% of the Suez Canal to the British government to pay off Egypt's debts. Britain at first didn't think the purchase would be important until they realized the value of the canal. Britain could now import and export from India, the jewel of Asia. After World War II, in 1947 through 1948, countries gained their independence and started revolts against Great Britain in Malaya, Kenya, and Cyprus. Egypt gained its formal independence in 1922, but Britain continued to station troops there that would govern most of the country's affairs. In 1947, the British troops withdrew to the Canal Zone. The citizens then turned against King Farouk, who was the ruler of Egypt at the time, for not preventing the creation of Israel, for their first defeat in the Arab-Israeli War, and for letting British soldiers remain in the Canal Zone. The citizens began to attack the population of British soldiers around Egypt. This forced the British soldiers to impose martial law. In 1954, Gamal Abdel Nasser became Prime Minister of Egypt and later became president in 1956. Nasser's primary aims were to make Egypt a non-allied socialist state, though it is difficult to be a non-allied state because of Israel's close proximity. In the article Nasser and the Aswan Dam 1952 through 1956, it says, so in 1955, Nasser arranged for a supply of Eastern Bloc weapons from Czechoslovakia. Egypt's economy has a great increase in trade by trading with communist countries. Nasser says he considers these economic links compatible with non-alignment. In 1956, Nasser's next task was to construct a high dam in Aswan. Aswan is a city located on the Nile River. The dam was to form a massive lake and would be 300 miles in length. The dam would control the annual flooding of the Nile River. For the creation of the Aswan Dam to be possible, Nasser needed a few loans from other countries. The U.S. and Britain secured their offers and loans in the Aswan Dam. But shortly after, the U.S. withdrew its loan, then Britain also. Nasser's response is prompt. Within days, Nasser announces the nationalization of the Suez Canal. Income from the canal will fund the Aswan Dam's construction. The nationalization irritated France, Britain, and Israel the most because they were countries that had a share in the canal since it had been built. On October 29, 1956, Israeli troops invaded the Sinai Peninsula. The British and French air forces joined 2 days later on October 31st. The British and French proceeded to bomb Egypt. On November 5th, the British and French ground forces landed on the banks of the Suez Canal. Israel's army reached the canal from the Sinai Peninsula. Egypt blocked the canal by sinking 40 ships, which soon proved to be a disadvantage. But Nasser's army also had an advantage from the Czechoslovakia's arm deal. By midnight, there was a ceasefire. October 29th through November 5th's events would soon be known as the Suez Canal Crisis. On November 7th, the United States and Soviet Union issued separate ultimatums forcing Britain and France to halt their attempted seizures on the Suez Canal. The United Nations arrived a week later to help sort out the damage. The United Nations arranged a truce between the four countries, and Nasser lost his air force, which would later be replaced by the USSR. But Nasser would have the potential to receive a higher rank in power for standing up against the British, French, and Israelis, unlike the former King Farouk. British and French forces left Egypt by December 1956, Israelis by March 1957. The canal was reopened in March 1957 after Egypt removed all the sunken ships. If the crisis had went on any longer, then the industry of trade would have been greatly affected. The big import that Europe needs from Asia is oil. If the canal was closed for a longer duration of time, then it would have been difficult for Europe to receive oil or any other natural resources it needs. Asia's economy would have been affected by the drop in sales of its popular export. Yet the Suez Canal crisis is where a rare successful collaboration was seen. The Soviet Union and the United States haven't collaborated often in history. In this time, they helped arrange a truce to sort out the damage of the crisis and helped remove the British, French, and Israelis from the country. The nationalization of the Suez Canal caused the Second Arab-Israeli War, also known as the Suez Canal Crisis. The world saw a rare collaboration, a near-fallen economy, a near crash in the European-Asian trade situation, and Nasser's rise to power.